Hello, everyone that's in here. I'm not sure if I need this mic or not. Can you guys hear me okay otherwise? My name is Greg Kruger. I'm a founding partner and chief operating officer at Dream Nutrition. I'm also committee lead for the Cannabinoid Committee for Midwest Hemp Council. And today on this panel, we have Justin Swanson, who's president of Midwest Hemp Council and also principal at Bose Public Affairs Group. Austin Rodas, founding partner and CEO of Dream Nutrition. He's also Midwest Hemp Council membership committee lead. I'm sorry, I skipped over Joe Linney, co-founder and self-proclaimed chief hempster at Hoosier Hempster Dispensary. We got Michelle Finn, founder of Jubilee of Wellness, and Chris Barclay, founder of Indiana CBD Plus. So the point of this presentation today, or this roundtable, is really just discussed for people who are interested, coming into the retail wholesale space or interested in that, and some of the pitfalls that you might encounter, some best practices, and just some need to knows if you are getting into this space. So we will do question and answer, and if anybody has a question at any time, obviously this is a small group, so feel free to ask any questions. I thought the best place to start would really be around, because we have a lot of store owners and front-facing people to the public. One of the big things that is hit in this industry is the stigma around the difference between really cannabis on the high THC side and hemp on the low THC side. So I was just wondering, for anybody at will here, how do you relate to fighting the stigma around that, and how do you change the public perception, whether it's the legal side or the storefront facing side? Who wants to start?
So really, anytime someone comes to the store or we talk to anybody face to face, it's all about education, right? So educating people on, really the value of hemp, because some people think, oh gosh, you guys are just wanting marijuana to come in, yada, yada, yada. Well, that's not really the case, because hemp and hemp products, whether it be smokable hemp or CBD oil, vapes, what have you, any kind of consumption on that is very valuable to people. And it's really nice to see those people that come into the store or that you're face-to-face interaction with that either had first-hand experience with either treating an ailment that they had, or they know somebody that did. So really people in general know the value of hemp, but some people still need that education piece of it. So.
All right.
I'll add to that. A lot of people that come by I set up a booth at the farmers market, and a lot of people that come by the booth, they won't initially know that they're approaching the CBD booth. And so they'll be like, oh, what do you have? And they'll see a bunch of oils, and they'll see the CBD, and some of them, their eyes pop up and they kind of freeze, and they're like, oh, I'm not looking for that. And I'm like, well, that doesn't get you high, right? And so we'll just go into that, and I'll explain to them how I help my mother, and I'm a caregiver, and I'm not promoting either marijuana. And so if I can get them to stay in that spot for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and help them realize that I'm not trying to sell weed, then they can usually open up their minds enough to hear what it might do for them. They might not buy that time, but they might come back the next time and be a little more open-minded.
Would it be helpful to use the microphone there?
Yeah, you don't have to hold it up right to you. Just kind of in the air.
I can speak loudly.
But yeah, you're good. Appreciate that.
So I would like to piggyback the education part. I've been in cannabis, and the government's the only one that wants to differentiate between hemp and marijuana. So what we're really talking about, what we all really are, is cannabinoid dealers. So you really want to discuss the benefits of the cannabinoids, and that hemp happens to be regulated on Delta 9 at 0.3%. Everything after that is just factual, So obviously we're not here to promote marijuana in the stores because we can't sell that yet. But the same principles apply with both versions of cannabis, and it's all cannabis, just like we're all humans in this room and we all look different, but we're still the same thing with all the same heart, lungs, kidneys, and it's the same thing with hemp and marijuana. So as long as it's clear that these are all hemp-derived products. We're here to promote health and wellness, and right now we have Delta 8 THC, which is a THC component that does have a side effect. It may get you high, and that's similar to D9 THC, but still, there's education to be had there. One of the educated parts of THC is that it helps with nerve pain management. So you have somebody who has inflammation, which most of us do, but someone comes in with neuropathy, you know, the CBD, the CBG, the CBC, it fights inflammation. It's not going to help with that nerve pain issue. Most people with those nerve pains are diagnosed anyway, and they know it. But you break the stigma with the education, and you break the stigma by explaining the benefits of it and being honest, you know. And it's pretty simple. It breaks down a lot of barriers just by having the education piece. So you're right.
So part of the stigma also comes because people have fear of drug testing and potential loss of employment, right? So is there anything that you do to reduce that legitimate fear, right? There's legitimate fear of drug testing. And I know if people aren't familiar with Midwest Hemp Council, don't follow, one of the things that we're doing with the Cannabinoid Committee is we are putting together an education piece and a movement to try to bring clinical data to insurance companies and to employers so we can start to work on changing drug policies, right? So a lot of people have no tolerance. Some may still be at 25 nanograms, but we know that people who are smoking are generally going to be 1,000 plus. So we're really pushing to try to bring education to the insurance companies and the employers because these products are here to stay. They benefit people, maybe even increase productivity, but we have to make sure that they're aware of the drug testing policies and what's out there. So does anybody want to comment on any education pieces or what they've seen in the industry on that?
So I'd like to just hit on that from maybe in kind of a Indiana starting to understand, you know, THC metabolite in the bloodstreams, and just because you have it in your system does not in fact mean you're intoxicated in any manner. So this session, and we had some really good conversations from legislators who were repeating that point. Unfortunately, it was kind of frustrating because they were using this example of Hoosiers going across state lines to Michigan or Illinois, consuming legal marijuana, and coming back, and a week later getting in a wreck. And right now, Indiana is a zero tolerance state for THC metabolite in your bloodstream. So you are essentially, if you're taking, I was trying to make sure that the conversation went with full spectrum CBD products. So our low THC hemp extract law, to help them understand, you guys are actually helping Hoosiers in Indiana, taking a legal product in Indiana. And it's a really good recognition that just because you have THC metabolites in your bloodstream does not mean you're intoxicated. It's not like alcohol where if it's in there, you're more than likely suffering from that. So just from that side, we made some really good progress and actually passed a law. It's very narrow, but again, it's for Indiana, it's a huge step where if you have THC metabolite in your bloodstreams now and you get in a wreck, you didn't cause it and you're not intoxicated, which is really, I think, at officer discretion on what is intoxication at that level. It's actually an affirmative defense now, so we won't be held liable for operating a vehicle while intoxicated. So again, a very small step forward, but if you would have asked me last year, was the General Assembly going to have an intelligent conversation about THC metabolites and the room didn't explode, I would have told you you're crazy. So from that standpoint, I mean, I think you'll probably hear that the common theme is just education. It's on the retailers to educate the consumers. It's on the retailers to educate their lawmakers on the benefits they're bringing to the community, the investments they're making in the stores. And with Indiana being a supermajority Republicans, you know, the heartstrings really the economic development aspect of it. You know, again, talk about the investments you made, the people you're hiring, at what level of wages. And that's really what's going to continue to move the conversation forward.
Yeah, I think just a segue on that too is it's not just up to us to educate the consumers, but it's also up to us there's a mission for us to educate employers and insurance companies and people that are looking over, you know, employees that might be using CBD products, because that's really where the liability is with drug tests is who's facilitating those drug tests, and people should be allowed to use these products that are legal in the state. So people that have a fear when they go into a store to use CBD products that could help them potentially even in their workplace, is that's really what we need to get rid of, and having employers understand nanogram thresholds, understand that somebody could use CBD products that are full spectrum and potentially show up on a drug test, and then having those employers understand that they could potentially choose different testing programs that allow their employers a little bit more leeway on the natural products that they want to use in their free time. So I think that it's up to us that's in the industry to really educate not only the consumers but the employers on those benefits and different options for them as well.
I'd like to add to that. As a retailer, I do see it as my duty to let people know that if they're going to buy a full spectrum oil from me, that they may test positive at work. So almost everyone that comes up to my booth, I ask them, do you get tested at work? You know, are you a nurse or do you work in construction? Because this could potentially cause you to fail a test. And they really appreciate the honesty because they need it. You know, I don't want someone to have a job that they've had for 30 years and they lose their retirement because I didn't give them the education they needed to know that that could put them in that position.
Yeah, to expand upon both things, Austin's point, USA LabCorp has just released a test that will test CBD and THC levels, but it's not widely known. It was developed during COVID, and then you have to obviously get the employer to pick that up and agree with it. And then you have to talk about insurance policies and all the other things. But there is something. We just need to get people more aware of it, employers more aware of it. I try to tell people in store, if you have drug screens or your employer or you have anything to say about that, let them know this test does exist. But we, you know, to piggyback with Michelle, the second question we ask when you come in the store is, do you have drug screens? Because we don't want anybody to lose a job. We don't want anybody to get in trouble because this is about health and wellness, and you should know what's going in your body and feel confident in what you just purchased, and you can go home and safely take that product without worrying about failing a drug screen.
I know I always personally, to add to that, educate consumers to always ask their employers what their policy is. Not to be afraid, obviously CBD products are legal, and if you ask your employer and they have a threshold of 25 to 50 nanograms, that's where I would probably be really careful about even 0.3% THC products. So again, education is key. I know being around since 2015 in this industry and in Indiana, banking and payment options has been huge, and a lot of people want to get into the retail space and the wholesale space, and they just go kind of assume that banking and being able to take payments is something that will be there. I know we lost our last bank account at the end of 2019, so it hasn't been that long ago. We've lost multiple bank accounts and probably 3 or 4 merchant processors since 2015. So for anybody getting into that space, it's important to know that those issues can exist. Does anybody have anything they would like to add on what to look for, what questions to ask for banks, or how to be above water and make sure you don't lose your accounts?
I like to make jokes about this. Like, I mean, when it happens to you, you're in the club now. Just so you know, like, it's gonna happen. It's a matter of when. It may be after your first transaction on a Friday morning. It may be April 1st, and you think it's a joke, but it's not a joke. You just lost 3 merchant services in 10 minutes. But the tricky part is that every time we've signed up, we explain, we sell CBD. We are in the CBD industry. We are in the hemp industry. It's always, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. And I say, no, you're going to cancel me in a year. Watch. We've had it with Visa Spark credit card. We submitted paperwork for 4 months proving we were a legitimate business. We got our bank accounts through Indiana Members Credit Union. They verified us, sent us a Visa card 11 months later after paying balances every single month on time and in full because I was super grateful to be in that position. They sent us a letter, in 30 days you'll be canceled. So I don't think like there's anything that we can do about it right now. And I think that might change with the Safe Banking Act 2.0, which is going on at a federal level, I hope. But I thought when the federal farm bill happened that this would all just go away, but it didn't. And people still think that we're, I don't know, drug dealers? I'm not really sure. But when it happens, you're a part of a club, and we're happy to have you. And don't fret because somebody else will pick you up. Just try not to pay over 10%. Like, that's seriously the game.
One of the big things, so we use Square for retail, and we got into their CBD pilot program early on, and then have been in it ever since. We had some ups and downs. They wanted to see some COAs for some of our products, so we had to submit some things, and which delayed a few things. You know, they hold your money, which is funny. It's like, oh yeah, we can't pay you, so we're going to hold your money here. And so it's interesting, but you know, making medical claims is a big issue online. So you know, if you got a website that's like, hey, this cured this person's cancer, then merchant services and banking institutions, they don't like that very much. You know, we'd love to eventually get to the point where people can say what they want, be able to make the claims that they want, not necessarily on a business standpoint, but if a consumer leaves a review on your page, Facebook page, and it goes to your website, they flag those types of things too, like, hey, the CBD product really helped my anxiety, and then they can kind of zoom in on that. So any kind of claims like that, they're kind of iffy about. So that, you know, if you're looking to have a storefront or online website, kind of keep those to a minimum. You know, just talk about the basics of cannabinoids. Don't really talk about, you know, this can heal this, and et cetera, et cetera. So
Just to piggyback on that, one, you never want to lie to your bank, right? So, you know, you want to go somewhere. It's easier to get in when you have a good relationship. So, if you've been with a bank for a number of years, that's a great place to start. But as been mentioned, that's not always going to get you through. I would just highlight that it's not really the bank's decision on when they cut you off. It's the regulator tapping them on the shoulder and saying it's time for this guy to go. Most of the time, so that's why the federal legislation will help quite a bit, because it's going to help get the regulators off the back of the banks. That'll be really helpful. Joe, you mentioned claims. You do really need to be really careful with that. I feel like we've gotten past that as an industry, but you do see a couple brands out there that do continue to do that, which is not very helpful. And I'll just give you a heads up, the previous Attorney General is very interested in Indiana companies making claims on their website. I had a few clients where we worked through that. So just be very cautious of how you're promoting and marketing your product. Again, as Joe mentioned, you also have to be careful on the comments that are left on your pages or your website, because you are in fact responsible for that as well.
I know our most recent experience, oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I just curious about Google. I mean, what about Google reviews that end up on your site? You really don't have control over those. You can't remove them, you can't do anything. What are your thoughts on that?
There's really no.
Have you had that experience?
Not
the Google reviews?
Not me personally, no. I've had the experience where the company has a web page that's dedicated to education, and that's where some of those.
Making statements on their page.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Someone that's away from the business making a statement.
Yes, but I'm just warning you that is potentially a liability for you as a business owner. Yeah.
Little.
Because there's no way really to regulate. You could go and make a Google review that isn't you, and end up on your page, right?
Right. Well, anybody. Sure.
Yeah, that also comes down to, if somebody goes on, really, it comes down to compliance with whatever merchant you're with, because we've been with, I mean, maybe close to 10 over the past 5 years, and a lot of the liability comes if somebody goes on Google and writes a review about your company, and then you take that and you repost that anywhere, then you have some issues, even though they wrote it. So if I take a review that somebody put on Facebook and I put that on my website, I'm liable now as an owner for that review.
So I have a plugin that pulls my Google reviews into the website. Should I not have that?
it would probably good to remove that.
I would remove that, yeah. And even there's been claims that people put up on reviews on our website or on other places that we still, even though they put it up and we didn't repost that, we would still take those down, because if they have disease states in there, like you have compliance it's not always a human that's combing your website. It's going to be AI that's going to comb your website, and they're going to say, this helped me with my anxiety, and they're going to say it 5 times in the review. That's going to trigger the AI to go in, and then they're not going to call you and have a conversation and say, well, you need to take this down. You're done with your merchant account. So, and also I think really like it comes down to I'll use Justin's favorite words. It's risk appetite, right? At this point, we don't have we're still playing in a gray area with CBD overall. So until we get some regulation with FDA and these guidelines that come down, banking, merchant accounts, claims, all this stuff, it's all different no matter who you ask. So it all comes down to your risk appetite if you want to engage in the industry at this point.
I'm sorry, do you guys have Google accounts, Google Maps, Google My Business?
We do, yeah.
Okay, so you're gonna get reviews.
Mm-hmm. We have reviews on our website too. So we have we use Yotpo reviews, which pulls on our website, and we haven't had any issues. And we our last merchant processor was the most strict that we've went through so far, and they didn't have any issues with that. It's more about what we post or what we control. We have to comb through that and make sure that people aren't posting disease states, and that's up to our discretion and our compliance that we go through.
No, you're good.
Fine.
No, yeah, we appreciate your questions. While we're on the payment options, one of the most recent payment processors that got on that we were going to onboard, because now we've got 2 and we wanted to have 3. So if one goes out, we've got a backup. We've got a backup to the backup, right? And so they do come. I think now as you see more of the larger financial institutions and more people coming into this space, they're going to be more and more strict on what they allow on your website. So we actually had a review of our entire website where we had to change specific wording, which didn't seem like it was really making claims, but it was close enough that they didn't feel comfortable with that. So just know if you're building your business and you're trying to get those processors, be very aware of what's on your websites. Understand also that you'll need a full panel. It used to be that you could just do a potency test for all of your products. I think it's going to be more and more strict because the most recent for us wanted to make sure that we had full panels for every single product that was being sold. So that's something to be aware of as well. Anything else to add?
Sorry, what was the wording they asked you?
What's that?
What was the wording?
What did they?
Just be really good friends with the words may and potentially on your website. So anytime you're solidified on an outcome is where you run a risk. Don't use disease states and really outcomes they're just it's may and potentially benefit maybe at some point. It could possibly help you.
No problem.
You know, there is a compliance in what you can say, I think, seminar tomorrow, but I will add this just because it's something that I find is very helpful. If you have your own products or whether you're private labeling, white labeling, or making your own, and you put your website address on your label, your website is now liable under FDA guidelines for labeling. Does that make sense? So anything that the FDA would come back to you for product claims on a label, which you might not have it on your label, they can put your website on there. They can take it off your website as a label violation. So you might avoid putting your website on your label for that purpose. Any other questions in that space? So with the legislative uncertainty, and Justin, you're at the forefront of this, and many of us are, then there's a myriad of product categories. It used to be just CBD, and then we know CBG was the second cannabinoid to kind of come out. But with the legislative uncertainty, is there any thought processes on absolute yes on products? How do you say yes to a product? How do you say no to a product? A lot of people put a lot of time and effort, a lot of farmers into growing craft flower in Indiana only to have that entire market space crashed. So what do you do? How do you plan for those uncertainties?
I'd just say this: don't put all your eggs in one basket. Be willing to pivot. In the story.
I think again, it all comes down to risk appetite, right? I mean, we've been in a gray area since the beginning of this. So if you want to get in and sell some products and you don't have a definite answer on what that product looks like compliance-wise, which we still don't on really anything. So if you want to get in and you want to play right now, then you need to have the risk appetite to do so, and you need to have backup plans, like Joe said. You need to have pivots ready, and you need to have pivots for your pivots ready, because everything can be taken away from you at the gust of a wind, especially if you're in Indiana. So I think it just comes down to evaluating. I think obviously CBD is probably the safest place to play right now, just because there's such a myriad of brands and investments in the industry to where that's a pretty safe place to play. But yeah, when it comes to that, it's looking at, if you have an attorney or legal counsel that you can kind of rely on to dissect some of that language, then go that route. But we don't have definite answers on what we can and can't do really about almost anything. So just figure out where you want to play.
And a good recent example of that is this, right? So Delta 8's, I think, a pretty good moneymaker for the vast majority of the industry right now. and that's even under attack now. So that there's language pending now that would change our low THC hemp extract law. Right now it says anything below 0.3% total Delta 9. So really it's your Delta 9 plus your THCA, and you do that formula. They want to change that to a total THC standard. So they're attempting to move away from the Farm Bill's definition of hemp again even further. And this is a good example of, if you're a retailer, it's time to step up, contact your lawmakers and let them know about, how consumer demand's driving the product. And hopefully we'll come back next year with some proactive legislation to help protect that a little bit. But to Austin's point, there's nothing's guaranteed in Indiana here on cannabis or CBD or hemp. But it's more about reaching out to your lawmakers, your regulators, and inviting them in and educating them on the impact you're having on your community.
Yeah, and the best way to do that also is to be members of groups like Midwest Hemp Council, and there's other groups out there as well that stay in the legislative arena, and they put out notices for when you need to reach out to your senators and your chair people in these circumstances. Is there any thing? I know a couple people have storefronts. What do you do how do you pick the brands? If you sell multiple brands in your store, like what's your criteria for separating and picking a brand and saying yes or no?
I think it's all about, for us, traceability, and we want to take a farm to market kind of approach. So know where the hemp comes from, know who processes it, how it's formulated, et cetera, et cetera. So as much transparency that you can do through and through. If you're just sourcing products that, maybe the flavor of the month or what have you, you don't necessarily know where they're coming from and what kind of chemicals that they're putting in and stuff like that. So we kind of want to vet the companies that we're going to have, or really kind of private label our own products and things of that nature. So that's where we're at, total transparency and traceability. And that's a process too. So, obviously you want to jump on the bandwagon and, carry different products and things of that nature. But, some going forward, it's going to be a lot about compliance and having the great products that show full panels, showing the heavy metals, showing all the kind of stuff that you want to be aware of. So that's how I would do it.
When you say traceability, are you third-party testing everything for your store, or are you just relying on the labs that are provided to you by the manufacturer?
So yeah, a little bit of both. So we'll do random testing on stuff.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if you didn't hear that question, that had to do with whether you're trusting somebody else's COAs or whether you're doing the testing for yourself.
So we started with actually the way you get brands is you hire an Austin, and Austin shows up to your store and helps you paint your walls. And then before you know it, you got everything they carry. No, so that hits on the major point, which is relationship and local. So you want to start there, and then you want to build those relationships, because those are the people who you're going to be kicking doors down with for the rest of your time in the industry. You also want to build that community because you're going to have outsiders. You're going to have the big guys who want to come in and push you around. And so when you have a community, you can defend one another and make sure that we all have the right products and that nobody is selling anything that's hot or getting anybody else in trouble or hurting, the entire industry, because that's a possibility. But after that, you want to look at the size of the company, their packaging, their insurance policy, because that's what's going to happen. So we're basically a third-party retailer. We don't manufacture anything. We don't white label anything. And that's because we don't want that responsibility. Jokes. So if someone buys a product from us and they get sick, for example, they're going to come back to me, and because I'm the face, Indie CBD Plus. Hey, what's going on? I puked. I went to the hospital, blah, blah, blah. Well, I can get you in direct contact with the owner and we can take care of this pretty easily. And that's how the situation works. And if you have a fly-by-night company, or if you have somebody who's not doing full panel testing or who's not looking out for their customer, it's going to be a heartache for you and for the individual that you're trying to help, because originally they came to you to trust you to begin with their health and wellness. And now they got sick from something that we both, thought, oh, hey, this won't be, there's no way this person could get sick on it. But that's a possibility. I mean, we sold CBD living water to a gentleman who took it to his father who had liver issues. And he drank half a bottle and felt sicker than a dog and didn't drink any more of it. And we had no idea at the time that CBD can affect some liver, drugs. And so then we just stopped, immediately. Do you have liver prescriptions and things like that? And so you kind of want to be involved with the relationship with the customer. You want to be involved with the manufacturer, and you want to make sure they're on point.
So you say product liability insurance is more important than lab, so that's what you check first.
Well, no, the labs are important because you want to make sure what you're getting, but at the same time, nobody's in business to make a one-time sale, right? Like, you started your company because you want to continue to provide products for the community. So it would be advantageous for you to put your best foot forward. And if you do that, then honestly, at some point, I should stop looking at your COAs, because I know Dave, and I know you're going to hit home runs every single day of the week, and if I know if you fail one day, I can call you up immediately and we can resolve that issue.
I just wanted everybody to hear product liability insurance, because I don't think it's vetted enough for people that buy stuff from the retail store, that buy it whether or not the company has product liability insurance. I don't know how many stores actually have it for themselves. It's very important to look into so it doesn't fall back on you when A or B gets sick, just trying to sue you in court for it.
Yeah, and that's how it happens. It starts with the company, and then they go after you personally. They squeeze until there's nothing left to squeeze.
To that point, if you're a store that wants to carry your own label, and you have somebody make that, whether it's a white label, which would be somebody else's product you put your label on, or whether it's a private label where you're making your own formulation, you should always make sure that manufacturer has you listed on their liability policy. So I would always say it's a really good idea that you have your own, and you can look at those policies, but definitely ensuring that your manufacturer, your provider has that they can put you on their radar. There was a statement made about liver. So we talked a little bit about product claims and with regards to labels, but it's pretty important with how we educate people and what we do and don't say. And so is there any disclaimers or anything that you stand up front and tell your customers first regarding their products?
I would say the first thing is consult a physician first. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a nurse. I'm not a veterinarian. I am a cannabis nerd. I study cannabinoids, and I can look at prescriptions and look at active ingredients and make comparisons, but I am not someone who's should be listened to when it comes to medical claims. Consult your physician, consult your veterinarian, and if you feel comfortable, go ahead and make a purchase. If you don't feel comfortable, go to the experts first, because I'm not it.
Yeah, and we're all genetically different, So I mean, we all metabolize things different. If someone does have blood pressure medications, then CBD can potentially affect that medication because of the liver enzymes that it interacts with. So whenever you're talking to someone, yeah, definitely get, hey, are you on any medications? And if they are on a list of medications, consult your physician. This may have adverse reactions with your medications. You don't know, but then ultimately, it comes down to that person's own responsibility to do the research on their own, and to really, if they want to get better, if they're looking for different options and stuff like that, to take responsibility for what they do. So, and that's what I've done. A lot of people have done, and just more and more education about, hey, CBD, it's great, but it can have adverse reactions to other medications because of the liver enzymes and how it's processed and things of that nature.
I'm don't have the retail side, but I think it also, I don't know if you guys do this, but I think it'd be important too to even pull up your COA and walk the customer through that COA and teach them how to read it, to educate them on what to look for, red flags, what's a hot product, what's not, what's an acceptable level of heavy metals, all that stuff. So I think, again, the more educated you get the consumer, like you said, you'll have probably more sales than one.
To that note, I think Midwest Hemp Council has posted, we have one of our members, KCA Labs, that has done how to read a COA, which is a really good piece that should be up on our site, correct?
That's right.
So understanding how to read COAs is very important. But again, to back that up, having spent a number of years in the pharmaceutical industry, there's all kinds of different interactions that the body can have. So just because you don't know that it exists, don't assume it. Always make sure you give the disclaimer even for protection to yourself, especially in emails, send people to their physicians. I think is probably an important takeaway. So we have like 9 minutes left here. There's two main things that I wanted to hit on. I wanted to hit on the top 1 to 2 pitfalls that business owners in the brick and mortar wholesale space can make or can be prepared for, and 1 or 2 best practices to achieve effective, sustainable businesses, right? But before that, if there are any questions in here, if there's anybody looking to start a brand or open up a wholesale or retail shop, or if it has any questions in general, that would be first and foremost.
Does everyone in here have a brand or a retail shop? Okay.
Any questions? So, okay, then let's do top, what do you see as the top 1 to 2 pitfalls for business owners? So we've seen a lot of people come and go in this industry. What do we think separates the ones that have stayed? A lot of us have been here since 2015, 16, 17 space. What's kept it? What's shut it down?
I think with any business, knowing your numbers, as far as like, what you have on, as far as margins, what your overhead monthly costs are, and then how many products you're going to have to sell in order to meet or exceed that, and to pay maybe yourself or what, your employees and things of that nature, and then have a good marketing plan. And then always feel free to reach out to other advisors. So Indiana's got a great resource. It's called the Indiana Small Business Development Center. I'm a part of that. And in every region, there are multiple business advisors out there that can help out with either setting up an LLC, walking you through a business plan if you're looking to get a loan or something like that, or just really want to dig into your numbers. That's a big thing. If you ever watch Shark Tank and Kevin O'Leary's saying, "Oh yeah, that was a great story and all, but now let's look at the numbers," and just kind of think about that every single time whenever trying to run a business, and the pitfalls of everything. So.
I want to skip over the topics like integrity and honesty, because I think that should be a given in business, but I think sometimes it's not. So that's definitely a big priority to have in business. And but outside of that, I think specific to our industry, some things to keep in mind are one is innovation, and obviously quality. And I think in this industry, it's extremely important to stay on top of trends, and not marketing trends per se, but actually what is working for people, and products that have high efficacy and that are breaking into the market, and they're moving so fast because they're helping so many people. So I think that you can easily look at products that you launch, understand those trends going up or down, and typically that's based on how well the product is working for somebody, and then also taking those products and then marketing them well. So not just marketing junk because you market junk well, but taking products that are working well, put some innovation into the marketing and the product development of that, and understanding where those products might go in 2 years. We have products that might have generated multiple 6 figures for us in 2016 that now we're thinking about getting rid of, right? So it's just understanding the way those trends, those move, and understanding what actually helps people, and which products to double down on, and which products that you might need to look at that might have just been kind of a bubble, and evaluating where that goes next.
So is that a pitfall or a best practice?
Both.
The advice I would give is to start small. Like don't feel like you have to buy 1,000 of everything you're going to carry. Don't feel like you have to buy 25,000 labels to get the best price. Like, just be really cautious with your revenue in the beginning, because it's a long game. And if you throw too much in the front, then you're going to get a year or two down the road, and it's going to be a little more challenging. Or you're just going to have all your money tied into inventory, and you're not going to have money for, say, marketing or insurance, all of those things. So just be really cautious in the beginning and slow and steady,
Yeah, Michelle's right. So the pitfalls are definitely overly investing into cannabinoids or a specific product, because, like the previous folks were saying, pivot and be ready, work with the trends. Also, this is a big one that I've found. We're all in business for ourselves, but the people who you're trying to sell to are going to dictate what you should be selling. So if you think, oh, I have the best CBD in the world and I created it and this, and this, Well, that's great, but do the next 1,000 people agree with you? Most likely they don't. And that was a hard thing for me to swallow because I think I know everything and I know what you like. Well, I don't. So I've changed to use tools like Google Trends when I see a new cannabinoid that's available on the market, when I hear someone whispering about it, when I see a brand have something that no one else has, like Delta 8, and then you start saying, ooh la la, what the hell is that? How, and then you're calling 3G and you're figuring out CBG, you're calling Dream. But so stay on pitfalls. Don't overly invest. Be ready. Don't be firm. And don't think that you know it all and you know what's best.
So that was kind of pitfalls and best practices, unless anybody else has a best practice. I would say, being kind of on more the compliance detail side, I would say check out multiple labs, get a good lab partner. Avoid trust, even when you trust people. I mean, I would say verify every supplier 3 times with your own lab tests. Spend your money and get your own lab testing done to verify that the lab tests that you're getting from your suppliers are good, and that's really a GMP practice, to be honest. And then the key thing for me, I say, is when it comes to labs, make sure there's a couple zeros behind that decimal point for limits of detection, because it's easy. If you want to really believe in what you're putting out there, especially something that's 0 THC, having a limit of detection of 0.02 is not really very much. Like I say, have 3 zeros behind that decimal point, and that's what your lab should be showing you. They should be willing to show you, in my opinion, they should be willing to show you the things you don't want to see, so that you can improve your processes and get them correct. Because the further we go down this road, the tighter that testing is going to be, the more labs are going to come up to speed and really show you the stuff that you don't want to see. You got to appreciate those things that you don't want to see, because it allows you to improve your processes. So, any last question?
Just want to hit on that. I mean, outside of your relationship with your, payment processor or your bank, your lab is absolutely right up there on your, the priority of your relationships, like Greg mentioned. It's going to keep you compliant. It's going to give you confidence on the products you're selling. So, just want to echo that. That's a really important point.
Anybody else? Any questions now? If not, we're going to wrap this on time. 2 minutes early. No? Thank you, guys.
Thank you.